Now, as this is Mandela Year, or the Year of Nelson Mandela, as proclaimed by the ANC, what does the foundation have up its sleeve to honor Mr. Mandela?
Good evening. We really are honored as the Nelson Mandela Foundation to be part of this moment in our history to mark Madiba's centenary. We want to say to South Africans and in fact the global community that this year should be about building a values-based society. That we say to South Africans, we must try and bring back the very values that we believe Madiba held dear when he came out of prison. But it's the values that you have to sort of define yourself and just hold on to and see how you can implement them on a daily basis. The second thing is we're saying all of us must help try live the legacy. And thirdly, we're saying by doing so, we should be able to find the Madiba in ourselves.
How then do we live the legacy earmarked by Nelson Mandela without waiting for special occasions like these?
You know, that's one of the things that we've been trying to say to South Africans, that we shouldn't be waiting for days like these for us to mark Madiba's legacy. This legacy is bigger than just a day. That's why for the year ahead, we would like to say to each one of us that we must go out, not only try and wait for Mandela Day, for example, which is Madiba's birthday. And for us as the foundation, we will be working with government, working with many other parties to ensure that every month we go back to a theme. We theme each month, and then we then celebrate Madiba. Whether it be in sport, we know that Madiba believed that sport was a key thing to use for us to help build a United Nations, or the arts, that we say the arts can also help build our nation and also help us reimagine the kind of future we want for our children in the future. So I think it means that all of us every month will have to identify something that we can do to mark this great legacy.
Now, he stood out as Africa's most globally appealing and recognizable leader, a politician with leadership qualities unparalleled amongst his peers. Any likelihood that these celebrations will be taken beyond the borders, perhaps?
Yes, of course. We are working with the United Nations, and we're hoping to be announcing pretty soon big projects that we'll be doing with the UN. We're also working with DERCO, all our missions globally, for them to do something to mark Madiba's year, as it were. We will be announcing some of the big programs that we're running. In the UK, for example, there's a project that we'll be running with the Apartheid Museum, where we're going to have an exhibition running there. We're going to have an exhibition in Australia that will then be rolled out from Australia, New Zealand, the US, and until it reaches our country next year sometime. We have about 5 books that will be launched basically here in South Africa, but those books will also be rolled out in all these countries that I was talking about. And we are grateful to the different embassies in our country, because they have all come to us and say, how can we mark this legacy in our own countries, across the continent, and also globally. And you can expect that there will be some activations that we'll announce pretty soon.
Now, Sello, just how deep are the roots of democracy that underpin the vision that Nelson Mandela had?
You know, that's one of the things that we have to work hard at. You know, the democracy is something that needs to be worked on, and worked on very hard. You'll remember in a book that we recently launched, which was co-written by Madiba and Dade Mandlalanga, appropriately titled Dare Not Linger, The Long Walk Continues, because that's how Madiba ended off a long walk to freedom. That we, as soon as we relax, the gains that have been made in democracy might be lost. And it's the work of every day for us to ensure that we build our democracy. Democracy is not something that you just input overnight and then you relax afterwards. So dare not linger, because it's in lingering that we might lose those gains that we have. Today, for us to be talking about the levels of poverty and inequality that we have in our country puts us to shame as a democracy. And I think it's important that we then go back to the basics, keep asking ourselves the question, are we still on course? What do we need to do differently for us to get back on course? And democracy works like that too. You can't just plant a rose, like the rose that we recently launched called the Nelson Mandela Rose, and then leave it there. You must keep watering it. And with this democracy, it needs active citizens who keep holding us accountable, who keep holding politicians accountable. Life as it many happens only when you have people who are relaxed and think that democracy will just deliver. The levels of poverty that we have happened because we have relaxed too much. We must continue striving for a better South Africa and a better democracy that delivers to the poor and vulnerable.
You speak of holding politicians to account. Now, the Nelson Mandela Foundation has been quite unrelenting in its calls for President Jacob Zuma to step down. Just how far is the foundation willing to go in ensuring that, if at all, in ensuring that President Jacob Zuma does indeed step down?
We're hoping that sanity will prevail. You know, we've had a period of almost 10 years of decline in terms of our international stature. We've had 10 years of people not realizing how far they need to go for us to get where we need to be. And you look at our education system, you look at unemployment of young people. We have declined in many respects. And I think for us to just be calling for the president to resign shouldn't just be about the fact that the ANC might lose some traction in 2019. It should be for us to call it what it is, that he's not good to govern. And if we are to make that call, we then have to ask ourselves, what do we need to do next? As the foundation, we continue to engage the ANC because we believe that the ANC needs to make the right call. We are of course aware that there are meetings that have been going on, and I think we just have to wait, knowing that something has to give. Level of corruption is just unacceptably high, and we need to then do something about that too.
Sello Hattang, thank you so much for chatting to us. That is the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Sello Hattang, speaking to us live from our Sea Point studios in Cape Town on the sidelines of the centenary celebrations of Nelson Mandela. Now, the ANC has indeed declared 2018 as the year of Nelson Mandela, and the kick-starting the program was Cyril Ramaphosa a little earlier on, and who delivered a maiden speech on the very spot that Nelson Mandela delivered his maiden speech shortly after he was released from prison. All right, we'll leave it there for now. Up next is Sports Live with Simon. I'll be back at the top of the hour with more news. For now, though, here's your weather.